Yeah, hey guys. So today I wanted to specifically cover reference fields. So kind of cover what they are, a typical use case, as well as setting one up within our employee model. So first things first, what is a reference field? So think of a reference field as a relationship between objects. So a real life use case here, for example, would be an employee manager relationship. So for this case, the manager is still an employee, but let's say you want a manager field where essentially what you want to happen is you want that manager, let's say their ID or something alongside that manager, to be linked to the person that directly reports to them. So that's a typical use case for this. That's called an inter-domain reference field. And then intra-domain reference field is the second one. And think of that if you want something outside of your model. So maybe, for example, you have like a geographical location that you want to identify that's in a separate model. You can then reference that specific record to that, I guess, the record that you want it referenced to. So those are kind of the two use cases with that. And now I think the best thing to do would be kind of cover how to set one up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my model. I'm going to add a field or field group, and let's just call it manager. And let's call the type, let's make it a reference, and then it refers to itself, inter-domain, so employee. You can enforce referential integrity as well. So for example, if it doesn't find a record associated with essentially the reference, it's going to be quarantined, and items such as that you can set up here, but just for this use case, it's not really needed. So I'm going to save that. So I have my manager field to reference. So I'm going to publish it, save. Great. Now I'm going to deploy it to my repository. And once it finishes deploying, I'm just going to find a record that I want to reference. So if I go to my current golden records, it has to be a current golden record or it's going to get quarantined. Let's take this right here. So NetSuite updated a field, so I can just use NetSuite for that if I just get a source entity ID. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have to re-import because I want those fields now to show up in my profile. So I'm using that source entity ID, NS. Let's import it. Finished. Let's save and close this. Save this. And then what I'm going to do is notice how there's a new field. So I'm just going to set a default value of the entity ID. So that's how this is linked. So your reference record and your entity record are going to be linked through this entity ID of the golden record. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Going to click OK there. And let's just create a new arbitrary record. So let's call it, I like the name ref field here. That's perfect. So just creating a new record, click OK. And we should be good to go. Let's test it. Not sure what's happening there. Just give it a sec. Still running. There we go. Completed successfully. Now what we should see is the record we submitted with a reference to the other record. So you'll see that in 1 second once this loads. Awesome. So as you can see, there's a manager field, and this is the golden record ID. So this isn't as humanly readable as you would like. So you can essentially format this differently. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my model, my employee model. And if you go to record title format, let's just make it super easy. Let's make it first name, last name. So this is going to name the records and the reference records for this. So what you'll see is that the record will be called first name space last name with obviously those replacement variables, as well as the reference record. So it's much more humanly readable, and you can customize these based on your use case. So let's say you want to populate an address field. You can use another model and then directly name it the address, so it just pops up directly. But just for this, I'll show you what it looks like now, but it's much easier to understand. Great, it's deployed. So now if we go to Golden Records, awesome. So record title is first name, last name, so ref field. And the manager is the first name, last name of this was working DQ step. So it worked as expected. All right, and then just one final thing. You can directly click on this and get right to the record. So you can see anything else associated with it, whether the sources were established or not, any history to it, and items such as that you can view on the normal Golden Record. All right, that's what I wanted to cover today, guys. Have a nice rest of your day. Bye.